So I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So, in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single-family house, there isn't much soundproofing. And the floors creak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 a.m. since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovelas till midnight, taking work calls all day and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls. So I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place. He wanted to go speak to them or have me text them and I said no. For example, one of the early times he stayed over we went to bed around 10. He wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their life, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot young 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 22-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is a normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it. And I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone with house kinda money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it. And even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, okay, boomer. Or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house in the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 to drive me to his house. Then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, okay, boomer, to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age. It's more of a mindset thing. I googled his property records for his house and he CO owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit. I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I'm honestly freaking out right now, but I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went. I'm a professional ballet dancer for a living, but I also do some modeling in my spare time. Last weekend, I was doing a latex shoot. Before anybody says anything, it wasn't anything fetish-wise. It was just a shoot that called for wearing more uncommon types of fabrics. My outfit was a black full-body catsuit, so think of a skin-tight garment that covers from neck to toe, including gloves. If you've ever put on a wetsuit, then you can probably imagine how much of a pain it is. It's a pretty in-depth process that involves lots of baby powder, a lot of sweat, and some less than ladylike stances. Dressing usually takes anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes start to finish. I always dread it, but can't argue with the results. Anyway, my boyfriend was in my dressing room as I was getting changed. He doesn't always come along for shoots, but I needed him that day because my car is being repaired and we needed to go somewhere afterwards. His one kinda annoying thing is that he talks to me while I'm getting changed even though I very politely asked him to let me do it in peace. If I'm just putting on a dress or something less complicated, it's not a problem. But with latex, you have to concentrate, seriously. My facial expression is pretty similar to when I'm doing heavy leg presses or squats at the gym. so that the garment slips on correctly and, more importantly, you don't rip it. It's very easy to tear if you're not careful. And a full-body catsuit can cost upwards of $700 to $800 minimum. So as I'm struggling, may have been on the floor on my back with my feet up on a chair, pushing my butt up to get the garment over my hips, he won't stop talking. Come on, girl, you got this. Do you want help? I don't think you put on enough baby powder. Babe, you got this, get that big ass in there. And I politely asked him several times to just let me concentrate. He responds by saying, relax, I'm just trying to help, before patting me on the butt. I'd had enough. I demanded he stand outside because he was being super distracting and I couldn't afford to rip the garment. I didn't ask him to help because there's a technique to getting latex on and he doesn't have it. He got all pissy and was like, whatever, maybe you need a bigger size anyway, before leaving the shoot completely and taking the car. I had to get an Uber home after the shoot. On one hand, I was getting super frustrated, I was hot and sweaty, and combined with my kinda short temper, I was getting pissed off that I couldn't get the suit on. On the other hand, I asked him multiple times not to comment or distract me. And I never indicated that I was in the mood to be touched. I am a 32 years old female and getting married to my fiancé, a 41 male, next year. After we got engaged, I suggested it might be nice if I asked my fiancé's niece, who's 15, if she wanted to be a bridesmaid too. I've only met her a couple of times, so we're not close. But she seemed like a cool kid, and I thought it might be a nice way for us to bond / get to know each other / involve her in the wedding. She's the only niece / nephew on either side of the family. Anyway, cut to a few weeks ago and we're in my fiancé's hometown to visit his family and discuss wedding-related stuff. His brother, sister-in-law and their daughter came over and I noticed this time that she was dressed a lot more androgynous than I remembered. The topic moved to wedding dresses and bridesmaids' dresses and I could see she was immediately uncomfortable. Her parents, her mom really, and grandma were making comments about how she'd need to be more feminine / brush her hair etc. And how nice it would be to see her like that. I'll be honest and say this hit a nerve with me, as I was very much a tomboy as a teenager even though I'm not anymore. And it absolutely broke me whenever my relatives would say things like that. Eventually, her mother made a comment along the lines of, it'll be nice to see you dressed like a girl for once. And she looked really sad / embarrassed / upset. In response, because that really hit a nerve, I immediately told her that my maid of honor would be wearing a trouser suit for the wedding and not a dress, and that I'd given all the bridesmaids the option of wearing anything they want as long as it's in the wedding color. To make things easier, I pulled out my phone and started showing her photos of the ideas my friend had sent me, the jumpsuit, culottes, a trouser suit, a tailored tux etc., and let her know that she could pick anything at all she wanted. She could even wear jeans and trainers if that made her comfortable, and that it's a wedding, not a fashion show. My niece perked up a bit when I said that, but her mom looked really pissed off. She's since asked my fiancé to pressure me into getting all the bridesmaids' dresses so their daughter will have to wear one, which... No. My husband doesn't give a shit what she wears, but obviously also doesn't want his family and me to be arguing on the wedding day. I don't want to back down because I know what it feels like to be pressured into wearing something that makes you uncomfortable. But on the other hand, I know it's only for a day and it'd make the family happy. I have a cousin, Kat, who got married to Henry early this year. We weren't close as kids, she was pretty spoiled and would always brag about how much designer stuff she has. Be really mean to people under the guise of just trying to help, etc. Don't go out of our way to interact with one another, but I do see her at family events and whatnot and we make small talk. I'm engaged to Chris, who is a software engineer. He's co-head of his department at work with 2 other people, not too long ago. Chris was telling me about how they had some new employees and one of them sounded really familiar. He told me the name and I realized it was Kat's husband. Also, he and Henry hadn't met face to face yet. Kat and Henry had a huge wedding. It was really nice, but all she did for months is brag about how amazing her wedding was. The wedding stuff's died down now, so recently she started going on about how wealthy her husband is and what a great lifestyle they have. One of my other aunts celebrated her 50th about a week ago. I went with Chris and Kat was there with Henry. We were chatting and Kat was saying how Henry has a fantastic new job that pays even more than his previous one. Henry chimed in and said that they were already planning to buy a new house. Kat asked what Chris does. I said he was an engineer like Henry and he has a good job too, but I'll admit I left out where he works on purpose. She smiled and nodded, then said it's fine. She understands that I'm embarrassed and want to keep it quiet. So that was pretty much the end of our conversation then. When we were leaving, she pulled me aside and told me to let her and Henry know if we needed help with the wedding. Obviously I knew what she meant and it was just another dig, but I said,
"Bye,"
and left. Literally 2 days later, I get a DM from Kat and she's furious, well, as much as one can be through text. That I didn't tell them that Chris was one of Henry's bosses. Henry was shocked to see him in the office and Chris made a comment, "Tell Kat OP and me don't need help but thanks for offering." Henry's really embarrassed and so's Kat, and she said that we made them look bad on purpose and if she knew, she'd have never made those comments. It was my duty to tell her and Henry. Chris and I had a really good laugh over this, but she sent a text out to the family group chat we have saying how she was blindsided by me. A few others said that what we did was petty and wrong.